Nexus Station hung in the void like a crystalline spiderweb, its translucent corridors refracting light from 3 distant suns. For 8 centuries, it had been the proud heart of the unconcordant, a place where disputes were resolved through negotiation, not war, and where 47 species claimed the mantle of civilization. On this day, the Grand Assembly was consumed by tedium. Delegates murmured across tiered platforms, some arguing over mineral rights in the Teller Rift, others calculating tariffs that only their own kind could parse. The Ephetheran ambassador floated in a haze of violet gas, shifting faintly toward gold as she detailed supply chains. The insectoid Khazari clattered their mandibles in collective rhythm, their hive mind processing trade equations with efficient detachment. Beneath the chamber's vaulted dome, order appeared unshakable. Far from the ceremonial splendor, deep within the station's command nexus, Commander Thaxniel bent over his array of sensory nodes. His 4 hands moved with mechanical precision, adjusting frequencies, cross-checking outputs. He had monitored this sector for 30 years, each cycle reinforcing the belief that the Concordance rules were unbreakable. Travel between systems required jump gates, and jump gates sang their arrival across subspace like thunder. Nothing appeared without warning. Nothing arrived uninvited. That was the order of things. And yet his lower arms trembled as alien readings cascaded across his displays. Numbers and symbols twisting into something impossible. It appeared suddenly at the system's edge. No ripple of subspace, no alarm from the jump network, no distortion at all. One moment empty stars, the next a vessel. The station's sensors stuttered in disbelief before relaying the image. Angular, harsh, primitive. A human configuration. Thaxniel's primary heart stumbled against his ribs. Impossible. Humanity had been broken 70 years ago, their shipyards dismantled, their fleets reduced to atoms above a burning Earth. They had been permitted only civilian transports, stripped of weapons, reduced to laborers and miners under watchful compliance protocols. He had signed the reports himself, catalogued the records of their disarmament. The humans had been tamed, but the scanners did not lie. The ship bore no registry in concordant files. Its hull was forged of alloys unknown to their science. Tungsten carbide interlaced with something his systems refused to classify. Energy readings violated 3 foundational laws of physics. Weapon signatures spiked with crude but devastating potential. The station's defense grid whispered awake, locking targets on the intruder, though Thaxniel could not bring himself to give the command. His secondary heart pounded now, racing faster with each scan. The vessel turned, and the light from Nexus's suns caught the etching along its hull. Human script, sharp and defiant, burned across the view. Prometheus unbound. The words struck him harder than any weapon could. Humanity's name had been erased from concordant records. Their seat in the assembly stripped away, their history archived only as a warning to others who might defy. Yet here it was, carved into the skin of a warship that should not exist. Thaxniel's mandibles clicked in unconscious agitation. He was a creature of order, a loyal servant of protocols and laws that had held the galaxy together for centuries. But the sight before him broke every certainty he possessed. The humans were not extinct, not pacified, not erased. They had returned, and they had chosen to write their defiance into the stars. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the forward rail of the Prometheus Unbound's bridge, her reflection ghosted against the wide tactical viewport. Nexus Station loomed ahead, its crystal corridors gleaming in the light of 3 suns. To her crew, the sight was awe-inspiring, a cathedral of the conquerors. To her, it was the prison where her people's story had been erased. Her weathered fingers curled tighter around the rail. 63 years had carved deep lines into her face, but her gaze was steady, harder than the alloys beneath her feet. She had been 17 when the unconcordant descended upon Earth, their ultimatum clear: submit or be annihilated. She still remembered the fiery ruin of humanity's fleet and the ash-choked sky. That day, her people's future had been signed away. Today, she had come to reclaim it. Her crew moved with disciplined precision across the cramped bridge. James Chun, her navigation officer, guided the vessel with subtle thruster corrections, as if coaxing a living thing. Sarah Rodriguez comes, fingers flashing across her console, quietly calibrating frequencies. Commander David Wright stood at her side, tall and grim, a shadow of the man he might have been if Mars Colony had not burned. Each of them carried scars the Unconcordant had etched into human lives. Each of them had chosen defiance over despair. Multiple targeting locks, Chun reported, his voice even but taut. Station defense grid is awake. A ripple of tension crossed the bridge, but Elena only allowed herself a thin smile. Let them lock on, she said. They'll discover soon enough that superior firepower means little against those who still remember how to fight dirty. The ship itself was proof of that philosophy. Built in fragments, hidden beneath the oceans, in hollowed-out asteroids, and finally assembled in Jupiter's shadow, the Prometheus Unbound was both warship and monument. Its armor was an ugly patchwork of scavenged designs, its engines an unstable marriage of physics and defiance. Yet it worked, because humans had willed it into existence. A rebellion forged from rust, desperation, and genius. Rodriguez looked up from her station. Captain, all channels open. We can broadcast to anyone within 3 systems. Elena's throat tightened. This was the moment they had risked everything for not a battle, but a voice. She drew herself upright, letting the weight of memory settle into steel. Attention, Galactic Unconcordant. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earthship Prometheus Unbound. We stand under Article 7 of your own charter. We carry grievances and evidence of crimes committed against sapient species. We demand to be heard. Her voice, transmitted across 100 frequencies, cut through the silence of the stars. It carried not only command, but decades of fury sharpened into purpose. On Nexus Station, the declaration detonated like a thunderclap. Delegates who had never even heard the article's name scrambled to recall their law. High Chancellor Zorvek, perched on his cold throne, clenched his scaled hands so tightly the bone beneath cracked. Article 7? It had not been invoked in 4 centuries. By its wording, any species member or not could petition the Assembly. If they denied it, they shattered the illusion of legality that bound their empire together. The Unconcordant had power, yes, but power built on lies and ceremony. And this woman, this human, had just torn the veil away. On the bridge of the Prometheus, silence hung after her words, broken only by the steady hum of the engines. Chun's knuckles were white on his console. Wright exhaled slowly, a soldier holding himself steady. Rodriguez swallowed hard, then nodded at her captain, as though to say, "It has begun." Elena let the quiet linger, let the galaxy feel the weight of her people's return. They had not come to beg. They had come to remind. And across Nexus Station, hearts began to tremble not at the weapons bristling from the human ship, but at the simple, unbearable truth that humanity had not been erased after all. They had endured. They had returned. And they had brought history with them. The Grand Assembly Chamber was a theater of shock. The holographic projection of the human vessel still hovered at the center of the dome, stark against the silken light. Delegates who had never seen a human in their lifetime leaned forward, their features betraying alarm or disbelief. The Aetherin ambassador's gaseous form had collapsed into a dense violet spiral, her hues no longer fluid with calm. The Khazari delegates clattered their mandibles in chaotic bursts, their hive mind echoing waves of unease. Even the aquatic Delany, usually languid and detached, churned the water of their environmental tanks. their bioluminescent skin flashing urgent crimson pulses. Then the broadcast began. It was not a speech, not another defiant declaration. It was an image grainy, decades old, carried on a wideband channel that every personal device on Nexus Station instinctively picked up. The chamber dimmed as feeds appeared across private terminals, holopads, even ornamental projectors mounted in the rafters. At first, the scene was deceptively peaceful. A Tenebian plaza, marble colonnades stretching skyward, a marketplace humming with soft-voiced barter. Then the sky cracked open. Orbital bombardment rained down in sheets of white fire. Buildings shattered, statues vaporized, living beings scattered like dust. The footage did not blink away from horror. It clung to it. Children running, their luminous cloaks trailing fire. An old Tenebian scholar, clutching a carved tablet, incinerated in a flash. Overhead, unconcordant destroyers hung in precise formation, their insignias sharp against the smoke. Gasps rolled through the assembly. The Delany pulsed with collective grief, their waters surging violently against containment glass. The Khazari's rhythm dissolved into a storm of clicks that resonated with alarm. For the younger member species, the revelation was devastating. They had been told the Tenebians succumbed to a plague, that the unconcordant had quarantined and mourned them as a lost jewel of civilization. But the truth was here, undeniable and merciless. Extermination. Systematic. Deliberate. Ambassador Crito of the Zalani sat rigid in the upper galleries, his chromatophores dimmed almost to black. His people had joined the unconcordant only a decade ago, lured by promises of justice, harmony, and protection. He had believed those words, defended them in council debates. Now he stared at the images of burning children and felt something his language could not fully convey. A human word surfaced through the translator mesh, blunt and raw. Raged-out high Chancellor Zorvik rose from his throne, towering, his scales shifting a warning amber. "This is fabrication," he declared, his voice resonant, practiced in command. "Human trickery, manufactured to poison our unity. They are primitives, capable of deceit, but not technology." Yet even as he spoke, delegates shifted uneasily. The feed had bypassed every layer of unconcordant encryption, slipping into the most secure nodes, as if invited. The footage carried metadata, timestamps, and signatures from unconcordant archives long thought sealed. To deny it would mean denying the very systems that upheld their law. Back on the Prometheus Unbound, Sarah Rodriguez's hands danced across her console. "Transmission stable, Captain. Every device within range is receiving it. No interference yet." Elena Vasquez's jaw tightened as she watched the reactions play across her secondary display alien faces contorted with horror, doubt, realization. She did not revel in their shock. It was not satisfaction she felt, but the heavy confirmation of what she had always known. The unconcordance rule was built on lies. Now those lies were unraveling. On Nexus Station, murmurs swelled into sharp debate. "We must investigate," hissed the Parthian delegate, feathers bristling. "If this is true," began a Voron elder, his voice faltering for the first time in centuries. The Khazari hive clicked in a collective staccato of agreement, demanding verification. Crito stood, his skin flashing in bold patterns of defiance. His voice cut through the noise. "By our laws, evidence of genocide cannot be dismissed. We cannot destroy this vessel without first answering the truth it carries." The chamber stilled. It was the first open crack in the wall of silence, and it widened quickly as others echoed his call. Zorvak's tail lashed, striking the marble floor. His gaze swept the chamber, searching for loyalty among the faces, but found only hesitation and doubt. For the first time in 2 centuries, the Chancellor felt the air shift against him. The humans had not fired a single shot, yet already the assembly trembled. And in that moment, with the images of Teneby in ruin still glowing in every corner of Nexus Station. One truth had become undeniable. The unconcordant story was no longer its own to tell. High Chancellor Zorvak's voice cut like a blade across the assembly. Initiate Protocol 77 Alpha. His command echoed, resonant with authority that had never before been questioned. The chamber stiffened in collective alarm. Even the most seasoned delegates hissed or shuddered. Protocol 77 Alpha was not a measure for debate. It was the Unconcordant's ultimate failsafe, designed to crush threats before they could germinate. Total lockdown. All communications severed. Stations sealed for weeks. Automated defenses brought to life with cold efficiency. Nothing survived inside unless the Council permitted it. Commander Thaxneal moved to comply. His claws flew across his control nodes, his training snapping into place despite the unease worming into his hearts. The command sequence responded smoothly, requesting authorization, receiving it from the Chancellor himself, then hesitated. The screen blinked once, twice. A recursive loop spiraled into endless approval requests, spinning in place like a snake devouring its tail. The system had acknowledged Zorvak's authority, then politely ignored it. Thaxneal's mandibles clattered in disbelief. This had never happened before. It was impossible. And yet the impossible ship had already arrived. On the Prometheus Unbound's bridge, Dr. Rashid Patel allowed himself a rare grin, his dark eyes glinting over streams of code. "They're trying to lock the station down," he reported, calm despite the weight of history pressing on their shoulders. "Our worm has them trapped in an authorization loop, elegant, self-sustaining. They'll claw at it for hours before they realize it's not an error, but a hand at their throat." Elena Vasquez nodded once. "Buy us 30 minutes, Doctor." "That's all we need." Across the station's outer defense grid, 17 warships were converging. Sleek and vast, their hulls shimmered with advanced alloys, each one capable of reducing a planet's surface to ash. Nexus's security feeds displayed their approach in terrible symmetry. Yet something curious broke the pattern. 3 vessels shifted formation. A Zelani cruiser peeled away from the main line, its posture not aggressive, but shielding. A Parthian destroyer flared thrusters and cut toward a civilian sector, positioning itself like a guardian. And most astonishing of all, a Voran heavy frigate, the very species that had co-founded the Unconcordant centuries ago, slowed and angled its hull, its weapons cold. On the Prometheus, Lieutenant Lisa Park frowned at her tactical display. "Captain, 3 ships are breaking ranks. They're defending civilians. Not us, but not attacking us either." Commander Wright leaned forward, his jaw tightening. "Someone out there is having second thoughts." His voice carried both wonder and the hollow ache of a man who had lost family to the Unconcordant's flames in the Grand Assembly. Ambassador Crito of the Zelani seized the moment. His chromatophores blazed bright, pulsing with determination. "By our laws," he declared, "I invoke the right of question." The chamber erupted in gasps and protests. Zorvak's tail lashed violently, cracking against the dais. "This is not the time for procedure. This," Crito cut across him, "is exactly the time. The humans have presented evidence of genocide. By our own charter, we are required to investigate. To silence them now would prove their accusations before the first inquiry is made." The word, genocide, hung like a toxin in the air. Delegates who moments ago clamored for destruction fell into silence. The Parthian ambassador rose. Feathers flared in sharp defiance. "I second the right of question." A rustle followed as more voices joined, hesitation transforming into courage. Back on the Prometheus, Sarah Rodriguez's console lit with intercepted transmissions. She read them aloud, her voice thick with awe. "They're fracturing, Captain. Debate is breaking containment. Some of them are listening. Elena said nothing for a long moment, watching Nexus's glittering frame swell larger on her display. She had gambled everything on this fracture, on the hope that beneath centuries of power, doubt had festered. The evidence had lit the spark. Now it was spreading doubt. Then Vitel's voice broke the fragile quiet. "Captain, I'm detecting a surge in the station's core. Energy output spiking. It doesn't match any defensive system in our database." His hands raced across his console. For a heartbeat, his confidence faltered. It's a localized temporal field generator." The words chilled the bridge. Wright cursed under his breath. Park's hands froze over her tactical readouts. A temporal weapon able to rewind a slice of time, undo an event, erase an arrival. The perfect counter. If they triggered it, the Prometheus Unbound would never have existed in this system. Their evidence, their broadcasts, their defiance all unwoven as if it had never happened. For Elena Vasquez, the decision crystallized in an instant. She straightened, her voice iron. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. We're docking with the station." Shock rippled across the bridge, but not hesitation. Her crew moved as one, their trust absolute. Engines roared, the hull shuddered, and the human ship surged forward, not to flee, not to destroy, but to anchor itself against the very heart of the CONCORD. If the Concordant wanted to erase humanity's return, they would have to erase themselves in the process. The Prometheus Unbound screamed through the void, its engines burning beyond safety margins. Metal shuddered, conduits rattled, but the ship held together as though sheer willpower bound its seams. Elena Vasquez stood braced at the command rail, every line of her weathered face set in determination. "Bring us in close," she ordered. "Lock onto their hull. If they want to erase us, they'll have to erase themselves too." Magnetic grapples fired, slamming into Nexus Station's crystalline plating with a soundless impact that trembled across the Prometheus's deck. A brutal, ugly coupling, human steel fused to inconcordant elegance. Sparks cascaded across the viewport as the ship latched on like a predator sinking its claws into prey. Warning klaxons echoed through the station's command tiers, alien voices layering over one another in confusion and alarm. Inside the assembly chamber, dignitaries craned their necks upward as vibrations rippled through the polished floors, their sense of safety cracking like fragile glass. On the bridge, Lieutenant Lisa Park called out over the rumble of systems. "Defense turrets firing. Plasma and kinetic. We're holding armors absorbing it, and the gravitic fields are bending trajectories." The viewport flared white with impacts, then cleared to reveal the impossible truth. The primitive human ship was shrugging off weapons that had leveled empires. Elena leaned forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Airlocks, now. We dock as liberators, not conquerors. Every action we take is being recorded. Remember who we are." Hisses and thuds reverberated through the hull as boarding collars extended and sealed with the station's airlocks. For a moment, silence reigned, the breathless pause before history's wheel lurched forward. Then the hatches opened, and 40 humans in makeshift combat suits poured into the most secure station in the galaxy. They did not come with wildfire. They moved with deliberate calm, boots striking polished floors like a drumbeat of inevitability. Improvised explosives crackled in their belts. Plasma rifles scavenged from forgotten caches slung at their shoulders. Yet the first actions they took were not violence. A squad broke off to distribute ration packs to cowering civilians, tearing open vacuum-sealed meals and handing them to trembling hands. Medics pulled field kits from their belts to tend wounded guards who had been caught in the station's own panicked defense fire. Security forces who threw down their weapons were shown mercy, bound but unharmed. Every camera, every personal device, every public feed carried the same images. Humans walking Nexus Station, not as monsters, but as people. Their mercy contradicting every accusation the Unconcordant had ever made. Meanwhile, Elena and her escort pushed deeper, guided by Dr. Patel's whispered directions over comms. Maintenance corridors are wide open. Their sensors don't even see you. 70 years of treating human technicians as invisible has its uses. The captain's boots rang against grated metal as she strode through shafts designed for workers, not rulers, her small squad at her side. Wright followed close, his jaw grim, his rifle angled low, but ready. Station guards attempted resistance, energy shields humming, weapons raised, but they faltered as screams of Tenebians dying echoed through the station's grid, hijacked and replayed by human code. A sound no shield could block. Many froze. Some dropped their weapons entirely, their convictions crumbling under the weight of truth and ghosts. Elena pressed forward, her pulse steady, her breath slow. She did not raise her rifle. Her weapon was the sight of her presence here, a human walking once more toward the Grand Assembly doors, a place her kind had been erased from generations ago. The massive gates loomed ahead, ornate and sealed against assault. But Patel's voice came calm and unhurried. "On your word, Captain." She gave it. Circuits fried in silence. Locks unlatched. And the great doors, meant to withstand fleets, opened with a soft, obedient sigh. Delegates gasped. Guards tightened their grip on weapons they no longer trusted. And High Chancellor Zorvak's scales darkened to black as Elena Vasquez stepped into the chamber. Behind her, a handful of armored humans fanned out, not with menace, but with the solemn bearing of witnesses. She stopped at the base of the assembly, the very place where humanity's representative seat had once stood before it was stricken from record. She did not claim the throne. She did not raise her weapon. She simply stood there, a human at last, returned to the place her species had been forbidden, her gaze sweeping across the galaxy's gathered rulers, and in that charged silence, with the Unconcordant's most terrible weapon neutralized and their lies unraveling in real time, the truth became undeniable. Humanity had already won the battle that mattered. The Grand Assembly was silent, but for the faint hum of translation nodes and the distant groan of a station still trembling from the throne. Prometheus Unbound's embrace. Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the chamber where no human had stood in 70 years. Her presence was a contradiction made flesh, scarred, armored, carrying the weight of her species, yet radiating calm where others might have brought rage. Her escort of soldiers flanked her in disciplined stillness, their rifles lowered, their visors reflecting the shifting light of 100 alien biologies. High Chancellor Zorvak loomed on his throne, black-scaled and motionless. The silence of his kind was often mistaken for composure, but Elena knew enough of his species to read the truth. Black was resignation, not calm. And yet his voice, when it came, still rolled with menace. "You have doomed your race, Captain Vasquez. Even if you survive this hour, the Unconcordant will grind you into dust. Our fleets span 10,000 worlds. You cannot hope to. Your fleets are already here." Elena cut across him, her tone quiet but lethal. "And 3 of them refused to fire. 7 more are asking their commanders for clarification. The rest are receiving our full broadcast, the archives you thought erased. Tell me, Chancellor, how many of your subordinates knew of the 12 species you exterminated? How many believed your lies about plagues and compliance? How many are beginning to wonder if they are next?" Her words rippled through the chamber like a fissure through glass. Delegates stirred, feathers ruffled, chromatophores flickered in agitation. The Delany ambassador's skin glowed a furious red as they slammed their tail against the wall of their water tank. The Khazari clicked in rhythmic bursts of alarm. Even the Voran elder, ancient and stooped, leaned forward on his staff, his luminous eyes reflecting the human captain with something like sorrow. Ambassador Crito rose to his full height, his Ilani colors flashing a pattern of resolve. By unconcordant law, evidence of genocide cannot be ignored. We demand investigation. We demand accountability. His voice shook the chamber. To silence them now would be to confess guilt before the first trial begins. The Parthian ambassador followed, her feathered crown bristling. The Parthians concur. The right of question stands. And then, shockingly, the Voron elder pushed himself to the center of the floor. The chamber hushed, for his kind were founders, their voices woven into the unconcordant's very birth. His hand trembled as he lifted his staff. I was there when this council was formed. We swore it would prevent war, not conceal it. We have lost our way. His gaze locked with Zorvak's. The humans have reminded us of what we once promised to be. Zorvak rose at last, towering, his tail lashing once against the marble floor. His guards shifted forward, weapons raised. For a heartbeat, violence seemed certain. Elena's escort tensed, ready, though she did not move. Her eyes stayed on him, unblinking, daring. The moment stretched until it was unbearable. Then the Chancellor did something no one in the chamber could have predicted. With slow, deliberate hands, he reached for the chain around his neck. The seal of office, gleaming with centuries of authority, slid free. He set it gently on the throne before him. His voice, stripped of thunder, came soft. Perhaps it is time for truth. The chamber erupted not with war, but with uproar. Delegates surged to their feet, voices overlapping in fear, fury, hope. Guards lowered weapons in confusion. The chamber that had stood as the symbol of order for centuries had cracked open, and through it poured the chaos of revelation. Elena did not claim victory, nor did she gloat. She simply stood where humanity's representative once had, 70 years erased, now bridged in a single step. She stood, a living reminder that her people had endured, had refused to vanish, and had come not as conquerors, but as equals demanding recognition. Behind her, Commander Wright leaned closer, his voice low but reverent. We made it back, Captain. Alana's gaze swept the chamber, her voice steady as she answered. We never left. They just forgot. The days that followed blurred into something no historian could have predicted. The Prometheus Unbound remained clamped to Nexus Station, like a scar on its gleaming skin, a reminder to all who looked upon it that the impossible had arrived. Inside, the Grand Assembly tore itself apart and reassembled under the weight of revelation. The footage from Tenebia spread faster than any fleet, carried not just through official channels, but whispered across personal devices, projected in marketplaces, replayed in temples. Truth moved like wildfire, and no edict could smother it. Investigations began at once. Unconcordant archives, thought-sealed, cracked open under the pressure of the human pods latched to the station's hull. Names of lost species tumbled into the light. The Tenebians, the Arrivans, the Halessi. Worlds listed as barren revealed themselves to have been butchered. Delegates who had lived their entire careers repeating the fiction of plague or natural disaster found their tongues stilled. Some wept openly. Others shouted denial until their voices broke. A few collapsed in their seats, their lives' work revealed as complicity in genocide. Through it all, Elena Vasquez refused the seat that had once belonged to humanity. She stood on the chamber floor, her voice plain, her presence unyielding. We did not come to rule, she repeated to anyone who asked. We came to remind you of your own laws, your own promises. We came to show you what you tried to erase. Her crew mirrored her restraint. They moved through the station like phantoms of contradiction feeding hungry civilians, patching injuries, calming terrified youths who had been told humans were predators. Every gesture recorded, every image beamed to worlds hungry for the truth. The unconcordant did not collapse in fire. It fractured into something new. The council voted to suspend Zorvak's office, and though the former chancellor sat in silence, his tail coiled in defeat, he did not protest. A coalition of younger species, the Zelani, the Parthians, even factions within the Vorons proposed immediate reforms. Equal representation for every voice, open archives, a military no longer controlled by a single ruling caste, but overseen by multilateral command. For the first time in centuries, the assembly chamber buzzed not with decrees, but with debate that mattered. On the third day, Elena stood on the observation deck of her ship, watching the stars wheel in their endless indifference. Sarah Rodriguez joined her, a younger woman's face drawn but lit with cautious wonder. "Do you think it will last, Captain? This peace?" Her voice trembled on the word, as though it were too fragile to speak aloud. Elena's gaze lingered on Nexus Station, crystalline spires glinting with the light of 3 suns. "Nothing lasts forever," she said. "But maybe we've bought them time to remember what matters. That strength is not domination, but in lifting others up. That no species, no matter how small, should be forgotten." Behind them, Patel's console chimed. He frowned, tapped keys, and then looked up with an expression Elena had never seen on him before disbelief. "Captain, we're receiving encrypted bursts. Dozens of them. No hundreds. From systems across the rim. Unconcordant warships?" Wright asked, hand instinctively dropping to his sidearm. Patel shook his head, his voice hushed. "Not unconcordant. These are independent transponders. Hidden fleets. Other species, long thought crushed or erased, signaling their existence. They're answering our broadcast." The bridge fell silent, the weight of the revelation pressing down on them. Humanity had thought themselves alone in their secret defiance, the last ember of resistance. But now, across the void, other sparks flared into life. Fleets built in hiding, survivors who had waited for a sign that the Concordant's grip could be broken. Helena closed her eyes for a moment, her hand brushing the rail as if steadying herself against the enormity of it. Then she opened them, fire burning once more in her gaze. "Then this isn't the end," she said softly. "It's the beginning. Humanity lit the spark, but the galaxy is ready to burn away its chains." A Prometheus Unbound turned from Nexus Station, its engines igniting in a blaze of defiance and hope. As it leapt into hyperspace, encrypted signals followed, a chorus rising across the stars. The Unconcordant had tried to erase history. Instead, they had unleashed it, and the galaxy would never be the same again.